Shalom, my friends. Welcome to Gracebytes. I'm Robert J Agustin. Have you ever felt that those who knew Jesus in the flesh had an advantage over us? Have you ever felt that it will be easier to be a Christian if Jesus lived next door and you could talk to him face to face? The generation to whom the Gospel of John was written felt the same way too. In this series on Gospel of John, we will ponder on few unique messages that John wants to share to us. It is to you and to me. It seems that the fourth Gospel was written when John, the beloved disciple, was nearing death. He was the last living link with the first generation of Christians, those who had known Jesus in the flesh. John's approaching death threatened to plunge the second generation of Christians into confusion and uncertainty. What would become of them without the guidance of those who had known and talked to Jesus in person? The gospel statement of purpose in chapter 20 verse 30 and 31 follows the doubting Thomas story in chapter 20 verse 24 to 29. Jesus told Thomas, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Comparing that verse with the statement that follows in the next verse makes it clear that Thomas represents all the disciples who had seen and touched Jesus. The first generation of Jesus' followers were there. The second generation of Christians followed Jesus without that privilege. Do you know that? Jesus' blessing in verse 29 was not for Thomas and the other first generation disciples. It was for the second generation, those who had come to faith apart from physical contact with Jesus. Friends, that brings us to the question that led us into the journey to know more. How do we develop a relationship with Jesus when we can't see him, hear him, and touch him? The Gospel of John was carefully designed to answer that question. Its answer becomes clear when we compare its portrayal of Jesus' miracles with those of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Each of these other Gospel speeches, Jesus repeatedly using touch in the performance of his miracles. But such touching is remarkably absent in the Gospel of John. At the wedding of Cana, in John chapter 2 verse 1 to 11, the water turns into wine without any physical contact on Jesus' part. And that's another story. Jesus heals the royal official's son in Capernaum while remaining in Cana, some 16 miles away. You can find it in John chapter 4, verse 46 to 54. Jesus heals the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda without touching him in John chapter 5, verse 1 to 15. He does smear a little clay into a blind man's eyes, but the healing doesn't happen until the man washes his eyes in the pool of Shalom, more than half a mile away. You can find this story in John chapter 9, verse 6 and 7. And finally, the seventh miracle is Jesus calls Lazarus from the tomb. He doesn't shake him or drag him out in John chapter 11. The common denominator of all these signs and the lack of physical contact between Jesus and the object of his miracles' attentions. Why is this important? It shows that distance was not barrier to the reception of Jesus' blessing. So the second generation's lack of personal contact with Jesus placed them at no disadvantage. Note also that it was the word of Jesus that accomplished each of these miracles. To the servants at the wedding of Cana, he said, "Fill and draw," in John chapter 2. To the royal official, he said, "Go, your son lives," in John chapter 4, verse 50. To the paralytic, he said, "Rise, take up your bed and walk," In John chapter 5 verse 8, to the blind man he said, "Go, wash," in John chapter 9 verse 7. And finally to Lazarus he said, "Come out," in John chapter 11 verse 43. In each miracle, it was the words of Jesus, not physical touch, that accomplished its intention. These miracle stories from John's record taught the second generation and all the generation after that, including you and me. The final generation Christians, the power of Jesus' word to overcome barriers of space. His word is as good as his touch. His word is as powerful at a distance as it is close at hand. It is through that word that the Holy Spirit ministers to the needs of the second generation. You can find it in John chapter 14, verse 26 and 27. We today share in the second generation deficiency. We too would love to have the privilege of Thomas, whose faith was fully confirmed by sight. We too will appreciate a face-to-face relationship with Jesus. But the Gospel of John tells us that the seeming absence of God in our time raises no barrier to the mighty working of Jesus through the Spirit. His word is as good as his touch. Friends, though ministered through a mere printed page, it still retains its power to save and to heal. All the benefits that were available through the physical presence of Jesus are now available through his word to our generation. John's gospel also teaches us how to gain these benefits. In each of its miracle stories, some human party had to carry out the words of Jesus in order for the miracles to take place. Friends, the servants had to pour water before they could draw wine. The paralytic had to rise and gather his bedding. The blind man had to go to the pool of Shalom and wash. So John's gospel tells us two things. First, we must know the words of Jesus and discern their application to our particular situation. A careful study of the Gospel of John becomes the great living replacement for the face-to-face relationship that the disciples had with Jesus. Second, we must carry out what Jesus commands. We experience the power of Jesus through the Spirit only when we obey his words. The fourth Gospel was written for us, so that those who had not seen might believe. Let us claim and obtain the life that Jesus shed when he was physically on this earth. God bless you. Thanks for watching Gracebytes. If you're blessed by the message, kindly like and follow us in YouTube and Facebook. We will see you in the next episode. I'm Robert J Agustin, and you're watching Gracebytes.